Hello. I want to talk to you about my journey. Um, I was basically born in the 60s. My parents got divorced in poverty. I didn't know I was in poverty. I didn't really know we were poor. Looking back, it was obvious, but, there's love in our house and we lived out in the country. So, you know, wake up in the morning on summer vacation, which is what I remember the most, and grab our BB guns and hit the woods. And this was pretty fun. And then we moved and we're in a subdivision. And at 12 years old, I started mowing lawns and, well, of course, spending all my money. And this was the start of building a bad habit because, even though the lawns were only $5 back then, I think gold was $35 an ounce. So investing was not out of the question. And there were still, and I grabbed as many as I could, but not as many as I should have. Silver coins were just all over the place, and people would dig them out, and through the years, they'd slowly disappear. But in the 70s, you're getting free 64 quarters, and that would have been an okay investment. And it would have been a start as long as you had the discipline not to sell them. Okay, and then throughout there, and then I started working. I moved again, and at 14, I lied and said I was 16. Back then, they really didn't care. It was summer vacation, and I was making money again. I was spending all my money, and it was fun, right? The more money you had, the more fun you had. And I was 14, newfound income, and just why not? And I didn't really have any long term outlook, and this has really hurt me. Especially, I should have went to college. However, college would have been a good choice at that time. I had no idea about paying out of pocket, which is what I was doing when I went back. Was paying out of pocket, and it's kind of nice not to have that debt. Then I moved out of the house at 18, and it was quite the shock. I went from buying this, buying that, spending all the money, and if I didn't have the money, I'd just wait a couple days to get paid again, spend my money, to having to pay bills. And that was a real struggle because I had to break, and I actually didn't break the buying things. I just paid my bills and spent what was left. And that, of course, was a mistake. But of course, it was fun. Then I got married and we had a son, and we got a divorce. Along with that came child support. Gone and leaned on an excuse that wasn't significant amount to not save and not invest, especially when I went to Kansas City. And with a girl, something happened, and I just left. And I started sleeping in my car a couple nights, and then um, got hired at a gas station as assistant manager, making good money. And it wasn't long before I had a place. Worked there for a couple of years, worked up the manager, and then I went to a convenience store as assistant manager, making significantly more money. Of course, spent it. Lifestyle creep, better car, better place to live. I was getting roommates, but that was just so I'd have more money to spend on myself. And again, but it worked. So I had two roommates, a sister and a brother, and I paid them cash 1 month, 1 day, and I went to work. And when I came back, their stuff was gone, and there was a note telling me I had to get out. And I had like very limited life experience. I should have waited for the landlord. Um, I didn't know that there were laws in place, actually, and I was making enough money to probably to pay for that if he was patient. Besides that, if there was an eviction process, it would, he would have been better off just letting me pay the money, uh, which I could have. I made good enough money to do that, and then just get the roommate. Besides that, if you're ever a roommate, it's always best to be in control of that place so it doesn't happen to you. Not only that, if you are doing it to save money, save that money in case they don't come up with their half of the rent, so that they can leave in the middle of the night. They'll owe you money. They'll leave the things that people do. Finally I went back to a tourist town, started waiting tables again, and making all kinds of money. Again, I had a roommate, and same thing happened. I give money and then I have to get out. So all this could have been prevented by having an emergency fund. Also, with a little bit of wisdom, people will get things over on you. And sometimes, it's not that you shouldn't trust people, but you should actually be smart about it as well. And then shortly after that, I started going to church and started tithing, which was a financial discipline in itself. It was like the first financial discipline thing that I did, other than paying bills, which I just felt like was a burden. I still do. I think debt's a burden. I just hate it. I don't have any. There is good debt, granted, and there are things I wish I would have in debt for sure, especially before the housing market crashed. I go on like this, and then I started saving some money. And I have a friend in Costa Rica I used to go visit because I would be laid off in the wintertime. And, it was cold, it was snow here, and it was nice and warm there. I would go down there, and of course, I had a place to stay, and I didn't have to pay rent while I was gone. And I noticed that if I stayed a month, I kind of broke even. It was cost about the same to stay as it was to go spend my days on the beach. I mean, I didn't really do much. I just went to the beach and did some exercises and practiced coding and learned some stuff. And that was pretty much it. And then also, if I stayed 2 months, I actually saved money by going. So you kind of like, I can stay here in the cold, or I can just go down to the beach and not do much and get a tan. And so of course beach that went on for a while. And then I went to Thailand one year to meet this girl, and I actually married her. She's from the Philippines. She was a school teacher in Thailand, and we hit it off, and of course saved some money, paid for an attorney for most of the paperwork. The last piece of it I did myself. When she got here, I'd already heard about some things going on. Of course, this was 11 years ago. And I said, look, all right, here's the plan, which probably freaked her out. The plan is to work and save as much money as we can, then leave the United States. She was like, why didn't you just come to Thailand? And actually, the thing about it is we have more money saved now and assets than if I went to Thailand. We saved 100% of our money, and that's totally impossible. So it was a good move if we stick with it. I mean, we may stay in the United States, but it just doesn't look good. Before I got married, I'd talked to a friend of mine. I told him, look, there's a problem. Every year we're making less money as a server because the town was growing. So more restaurants, less work. He claimed that he was making as much as he was. I said, well, okay, so let's just say that's true. You're paying higher price for everything, so therefore you're making less. And somebody came along and said, why don't you guys flip houses? And it was shortly after the housing crash. So I'm going to guess it was somewhere around 2010, 2009. I don't know, somewhere around there. And I asked him, well, do you really think we could make money in this market? He said, well, absolutely, if you get the right spot. So we talked. We both agreed to save our money. And then I got married, saving my money, and I came across two places. They were both mobile. We bought one. Wish I would have bought them both. But I called him up, asked if he had any money saved. He had zero saved. Okay, so I didn't tell him why. He probably figured it out. So we had bought that place, and we paid cash for it because, well, I got my first software development job. It wasn't paying ideal money, but I was excited. It paid halfway decent money, and I was learning. So we buy it, we move in. We never increased our lifestyle. By this time, child support was non-existent. I never increased my lifestyle. We did sink thousands into that place because it was a fixer-upper, but we basically stole it. We got it so cheap. This opened up the door for us to save even more money. Time went by, and then their modular down the street just falling apart. And I drove by it every day. And I'm like, I wonder. Well, I got to meet the owner, and I made him an offer and got a really good offer. Of course, put thousands into that. Sold the first place for 300%. And we still have that money, which should have invested it. And we kind of made a decision our real estate money would stay in real estate. I kind of think that's kind of bad because, we do have some CDs, but, we didn't for a while. And it was collecting next to nothing. But anyway, that's another story. Get married, and here comes the Affordable Care Act. My wife or I didn't have insurance. Okay, so we paid the tax. I say tax, they say it's a fine. Anytime my money goes to IRS, it's a tax. And it's pretty clever because IRS can withhold really easy from your account if you don't pay this fine. And I paid it, and the next year, it was either the first year or the next year because it was doubling every time. And I'm like, look, we're saving money. Life is pretty good. But this fee for not having health care, we can pay it this year, we can pay it next year, but the year after that, we're not going to be saving any money. And once we hit the point where we can't save any money, it's probably past time to leave, because you don't want to be in a position where you save money and you build assets, and then all of a sudden you can't afford to live and you have to start chipping away at your assets, which are meant for retirement. Then Trump got elected and did away with that fee, which is really good because that was horrible. We made some investments in crypto, and I got SIM swapped, and they got me for a significant amount of money. And but I had two exchanges. So basically, I kind of broke even when I could have had tens of thousands of dollars more. Lesson learned. That's the thing when it comes to security. Don't think it won't happen to you, because that's what I was thinking. And there were ways to prevent that. I might do a video on it. I'm not sure. But when I first got married, before we bought our house, we stayed at an extended stay. It was cheaper than my old landlady called me, and we rented the upper half of the house cheaper. Plus we had a garage, and it was much better. And then we bought that place. Our first vacation was, after about a year, we went to Florida and we house sat for a friend. That was, and I was actually, by this time, I was working remote as a software developer. So it's kind of like a working vacation. And then we went and saw the total eclipse of the sun in Columbia, Missouri. And then our vacation started going up. So we went to Costa Rica once, Rocky Mountain National Park, Mesa Verde, Mammoth Cave, a lot of national parks. Been to Mammoth Cave about 3 times. Shenandoah was awesome. Even then, now we're getting the hang of camping, and sometimes we stayed in a motel due to poor planning. And that's the thing, is that you want to have that planned out. You don't want to be looking for a motel, after dark. Get your camping spot, check in, cook dinner, and you'll save money. And another thing we did to save money is we hiked. But, so it took a while, but in 10 years we've saved enough, plus Social Security will be kicking in shortly if I decide to. We saved enough to actually leave. And a lot of people that I talked about leaving to actually are like, yeah, you've been talking about it. I said, no, dude, I've been preparing for it all this time. And that being said, it's a reality, and just knowing that we can afford to leave is a lot of stress off of me, and kind of looking forward to it. Look, I don't want to work till the day I die. I really don't. If that means going to a simple life because I got started late in life, so be it. We gave up a lot of stuff, and I'm actually there's a lot of freedom in giving up stuff you don't need. That's where I'm at now, and we'll see what happens. The way it looks, I think leaving the United States would be a smart thing to do, and I'm exploring ways to have an income online. If you can make an American paycheck in a cheaper country, why would you stay other than family? And people had brought that up. Well, what about your family? I don't see my kids enough anyway, for one. For two, if things really get bad in the United States, I could be the doorway for them to escape, you know. So the sixth one, half dozen to another, and we will see what happens. So that's pretty much my story.